Meet Abby Choi, a high society girl from Hong Kong who had it all, and I mean all. The world couldn't stop talking about her lavish lifestyle, her massive social media following, and, of course, her fortune, which was estimated at a jaw-dropping $100 million. Her stunning face graced the pages of high-end fashion magazines like Walk and Liao Ficelle. Basically, she was living the dream. But then, on February 21, 2023, Abby just vanished. Poof, gone. Left everyone scratching their heads, wondering how someone so visible could simply disappear. The police kicked off a massive search, even pulling in the Flying Tigers squad. Yes, that's a real thing. It took them just 3 days to uncover the horrifying truth. Welcome to my channel, where we dive into real crimes and strange phenomena. If that's your jam, hit that button down below and let's get into it. Hong Kong, a bustling city full of some of the richest people on Earth. And Abby Choi? She was living right at the top. Hong Kong's skyline boasts 7,500 skyscrapers soaring over 100 meters tall, creating a breathtaking cityscape. It's a playground for the wealthy elite who indulge in more Rolls-Royces per capita than anywhere else in the world. These same people frequent world-class restaurants, enjoy haute cuisine, luxury shopping, and exclusive private clubs. But while the city's rich bask in their opulence, the gap between the wealthy and the struggling is growing wider by the day. Many in Hong Kong are just scraping by, barely making ends meet. In recent years, this disparity has sparked social unrest, protests against the government, and calls for more democracy and equality. And yet, despite all this tension, Hong Kong remains a vibrant, captivating city, a unique blend of cultures with a booming economy. It was in this world, among Hong Kong's elite, that Abby Choi was raised. A world-renowned model and an icon of Hong Kong aristocracy, Abby was born on July 11, 1994, as the youngest of 4 daughters in a wealthy family that owned multiple construction companies across Hong Kong and China. Her mother reportedly owned numerous properties and held multi-million-dollar assets, ensuring Abby and her family lived in luxury. But despite being born into immense wealth, Abby made a conscious choice early on. She wasn't going to just live off her family's fortune. She set her sights on building a career in the spotlight, determined to make a name for herself in the media world. Her captivating journey began on Instagram. Back then, her first post featured a Lady Dior handbag worth a whopping $6,000. Gradually, she went from that to posting pictures of herself lounging in the presidential suites of the Ritz-Carlton. Her soft demeanor and stunning appearance quickly garnered her a massive following, leading to invites to exclusive parties with luxury designer brands. Dior, for instance. But those events were just the tip of the iceberg. She also indulged in luxurious vacations in Bali and attended fashion events in Paris, of course. Now, it's true that Abby was born into a wealthy and successful family, but I'm more than sure her parents didn't just get lucky. Success takes brains, education, and effort. She grew up surrounded by all that glamour, and in 2013, at the age of 18, she found love. She married a man named Alex Kwong, and they had 2 kids. But their marriage didn't last long, just 3 years before it ended in divorce. Despite that, Abby stayed loyal to Alex and his entire family. So loyal, in fact, that she bought them a lavish apartment in one of Hong Kong's wealthiest suburbs, a luxurious $8,000 residence with marble floors, walls, and a magnificent courtyard, a clear testament to her trust and care. What's even more striking is that Abby registered the property under Alex's father's name, saving nearly $1,000 in the process. And yet she doesn't even live there. Every member of the Kwong family, including Alex himself, his wife, and kids, now call it home. Formerly, Alex was just a trustee, meaning Abby could always prove that she was the one who bought the place. Classic case of keep your enemies close, I guess. So, technically, Abby could have contested ownership of the property if she ever needed to. Not the most comfortable situation, considering she single-handedly bought the place but didn't benefit from it in any way. Sure, it secured her kids' future, but let's be real. Her ex-husband and his family were part of her past, a burden she had to carry. That couldn't have been easy. And over time, the situation only got worse. What might have seemed like a good idea in the beginning became more of a nightmare. How long was she expected to keep paying for them? A year? 3? 10? It's about time we talk about another Kwong family member, Anthony, Alex's older brother, who was 31 at the time. Just like the rest of Alex's family, Abby felt this weird sense of responsibility towards him. 2 years earlier, when her marriage to Alex was still solid, Anthony was struggling, jobless, barely scraping by. In an attempt to ease his situation, Abby hired him as her personal driver, and that arrangement blossomed into a friendship. They became close, and soon enough, Anthony started referring to Abby as his sister. His Instagram was filled with pictures of the two of them together, and he regularly posted from his account as if she was part of his family. Around that time, a couple of small but successful businesses were launched, including a pancake stall in the heart of the city, where Anthony took charge during his off hours from driving. Rumor had it, he managed to save up quite a bit by balancing both roles with flair. But back to Abby. Sometime after her divorce, she found love again with a man named Chris Tam. Seems like Abby had a knack for picking up pieces and moving forward, though one can't help but wonder how long she had to keep dragging along all that Kwong baggage. They exchanged vows at a lavish ceremony, the kind that screams money talks. In 2016, some long-lost wedding footage resurfaced, showing only the closest of family and friends. Kinda makes you wonder who they didn't invite, right? Anyway, Chris, a successful entrepreneur hailing from Hong Kong just like Abby, grew up in a family that had more than enough cash to go around. His dad? Oh, just the founder of a renowned restaurant chain that everybody loves to brag about. No big deal. Together, Chris and Abby had 2 kids, and although Abby already had 2 children from her previous relationship, the 4 siblings surprisingly got along well. So well, they often spent weekends together, frolicking through Disneyland and taking extravagant trips on private yachts like it was no biggie. But let's not kid ourselves. Behind all that Instagram perfect life, Abby's wild success had nothing to do with this whole family bliss thing. Thanks to her killer connections and a wallet the size of a small country, she transformed herself from just another fashion icon and media darling into an actual media mogul. Her charisma, impeccable figure, and killer sense of style got her splashed across the covers of big-name magazines like Harper's Bazaar, and she even graced Official and Work. Still, behind those glossy covers, by the time 2023 rolled around, tensions between Abby and the Kwan family were reaching a boiling point. The Kwans had been living in her house, the one she bought over 6 years ago. At first, she was fine with it. Sure, take the guest room, make yourselves at home. But as she got older, and probably a little wiser, she realized she was being taken advantage of. And honestly, she owed them nothing. When she got that apartment, she was young, impressionable, and yeah, maybe a bit naive. But now? Oh, she was done playing the fool. Rumor had it that Alex's father convinced Abby to buy that apartment. Manipulative? Maybe. But now, Abby wanted her place back, like yesterday. Unfortunately, this wasn't the only bad news for the illustrious Wong family. Alex's father, Cao, once a respected police sergeant in Hong Kong, was known for his impeccable service. You could say he was a model cop, right up until 2005, when things took a nosedive. He got accused of assaulting a woman, and instead of clearing his name or facing the charges like a stand-up guy, he just resigned. Case closed. The Hong Kong police conveniently swept it under the rug. No punishment, no reprimand. Classic. But Cao wasn't the only Wong with a skeleton or 10 in the closet. Alex? Oh, he had his own mess of shady dealings. At one point, the guy even went into hiding from the cops for a couple of years. In 2015, he decided to reinvent himself as an investor and set his sights on the gold market. Sounds legitimate, right? Except instead of risking his own cash, he charmed 4 wealthy businessmen into trusting him with their money. You see where this is going, right? $500,000 later, Alex didn't even try to invest. He just made off with the cash, pulling a full-on Houdini. And it wasn't just shady business. The family had serious financial issues too. Alex's brother Anthony was drowning in debt. Even after being bailed out more than once, he couldn't kick the habit of spending more than he earned. His Instagram? A gallery of fake luxury, all carefully curated to hide the fact that he was neck-deep in overdue bills. In 2019, a local bank even took him to court over his unpaid loans. Oh, and let's not forget their dear mother. She wasn't exactly living the high life either, struggling with her own financial troubles. The Wongs? A masterclass in how not to manage family fortunes. 3 years earlier, the court declared her bankrupt. The contrast between Abby and her former in-laws was nothing short of striking. While Abby gained international fame and built a fortune exceeding 100 million Hong Kong dollars, her ex-husband and his entire family were stuck in place, practically leeching off her success. Now, as humans, we're prone to envy and anger, and those feelings can manifest in all sorts of ugly ways. Although Abby wasn't responsible for their financial mess, they were, of course, fuming at her success. Abby felt this growing resentment and, at some point, decided it was time to cut off the freeloading. She wanted her apartment back, the one worth $8 million, and that conversation, it didn't go well, so badly, in fact, that someone in the family actually threatened to kill her if she tried to take it back. To say Abby was upset would be an understatement. She immediately sought legal advice, but what stands out here is the size of this girl's heart. Despite the threats, she looked beyond the craziness and started searching for a new home for them. I mean, she even had plans to buy them property, which is wild considering the situation. Sure, her new place wouldn't have compared to their previous $8 million home, but seriously, what more could they even expect at this point? Sadly, Abby's plans never got the chance to come to life. She disappeared suddenly on February 21st, 2023. That morning, she left early to pick up her daughter from school, but when the final bell rang, Abby was nowhere to be found. Despite countless calls and texts, no one got a response. For Abby, this behavior was way out of character, and it set off alarm bells among the school staff. Given her busy career and lifestyle, Abby was glued to her phone 24/7, so missing calls and notifications, unheard of. Her social media profiles also went silent, which only fueled the growing suspicion. Within 2 hours, a missing person report was filed, and, in typical rich people have their perks fashion, over 150 police officers were put on the case. It didn't take long for investigators to find their first clue. Surveillance footage from her apartment complex showed Abby in a white long-sleeved top, white pants, and white slippers, carrying a purple bag. Based on the timing, it looked like she was indeed heading to pick up her daughter. The car on the footage resembled the 7-seater she and Anthony usually drove. When they questioned Anthony and his family, though, it led nowhere. They all claimed they hadn't seen her since the day she vanished. Despite their efforts, the authorities hit a dead end in trying to locate Abby. At some point, investigators turned to the car's GPS records, and what they found was devastatingly heartbreaking. Turns out the car was moved about 30 kilometers away from Hong Kong to a village called Lung Mei Tsuen. Once this rather sketchy information came in, dozens of officers were immediately dispatched to comb the area. They went door to door questioning locals, meticulously reviewed surveillance footage from nearby homes, and gathered dashcam recordings from all vehicles near the local parks. By Friday noon, 72 hours after Abby went missing, just 24 hours after Lung Mei Tsuen became a point of interest, the detectives focused on one particular 3-story house. Unfortunately, nothing could have prepared them for the horror waiting inside. Except maybe the well-equipped kitchen, because aside from that, the whole house was empty. Windows, floors, and walls, all covered in tarp. I'll spare you the gory details, but let's just say they found 2 human legs in the fridge. The kitchen? Oh, it was decked out like something out of a butcher's fever dream. A meat grinder, an electric saw, cleavers, meat hammers, protective shields, raincoats, and, oh yeah, 2 giant pots boiling away on the stove. Inside those pots, a human skull and various rib bones. The authorities were shaken to their core by the grisly scene, and as news spread, shockwaves of speculation and outrage rippled across the country. And soon, the entire world. After analyzing all the surveillance footage from the area, the Kwong family members were spotted acting, well, suspiciously to say the least. This led to a full-scale search for Abby's remains in the surrounding area, involving over 100 Hong Kong police officers. I mean, it's one thing to get caught red-handed, but cooking it? Unbelievable. In the search efforts, they pulled out all the stops. Divers, dogs, trackers, data analysts, and even drones. But unfortunately, despite all the resources, they still didn't find Abby's remains. Investigators confirmed they had a particular interest in a large plot of land on a nearby hill, but even that search turned up nothing. In case you were still in doubt, yeah, it really looks like the Kwong family is behind her death. And, as shocking as it sounds, it seems the entire family was involved, except for Abby's own children. Now, the burning question remains. What exactly happened to Abby on the day she disappeared? Here's what we know so far. Anthony knew Abby's usual routine, and with that knowledge, he and the other Kwong family members schemed to abduct her. It gets worse. Turns out Cao, the guy who had been threatening her, started laying the groundwork for this twisted plan weeks before, all for $300. He even rented the house in Lung Mei Tsuen, with the explicit intent of destroying all evidence after the murder. Anthony reportedly drove her to the entrance of Lion Rock Tunnel, where Alex was already waiting. They continued their trip northeast toward Lung Mei Tsuen, where they met their father at the infamous house. Later that evening, Abby Choi was reported missing. When the police reached out to the Kwongs for information, the 2 brothers and their father allegedly gave misleading statements. The sheer planning, the family involvement, and that pitiful price tag? It's hard to wrap your head around it. What's even more unsettling is the precision and patience they had to pull this off. Pure madness. So, the whole thing started to fall apart when their stories didn't match up. 3 days later, the authorities searched the house, and what they found was nothing short of horrifying. Anthony and Cao were nabbed that same evening, on February 25th. But Alex, he was nowhere to be found. As soon as the news hit the streets, Alex became the most wanted man in town, with pretty much everyone trying to track him down. A full-on manhunt was launched, and the government slapped a bounty of 200 million Hong Kong dollars on his head for whoever could bring this psycho in. Things got so intense that even the city's elite special forces, the Flying Tigers, were thrown into the mix. Now, if they bring in the Tigers, you know it's game over. Fortunately for everyone involved, Alex was caught the next day by some quick-thinking officers down at the pier. Turns out, the genius was trying to sneak out of the country on a yacht. He had over $500,000 HK on him and a collection of luxury watches and jewelry worth around $4 million. His brilliant escape plan? Slip the yacht's crew a cool $13,000 to let him stow away like a runaway cat. But thank God, instead of sailing away to freedom, this idiot ended up behind bars where he belongs. After the arrest, police hit Alex, Kao, and Anthony with unofficial murder charges. Even Xiao's mistress wasn't safe. They suspected she helped Alex with his little escape scheme. A couple more people were dragged into the mess too, including the sailor who was supposed to smuggle him out in one of Alex's buddies. And then came the heartbreaking part. Tributes to Abby started pouring in from her family, colleagues, and her countless friends. Even her last husband, Chris Tam, spoke up, calling her a kind soul who always wanted to help others and who was always there for him. Her friends? They remembered her as loving, caring, and strong, someone who managed to be successful while also being an incredible human being. She left behind 4 children, and right now, as you're watching this video, her mother is fighting in court to gain custody of them and make sure they stay within the Choi family. If this story hit you, make sure to like the video and drop a comment about what you think of the case. Thanks for watching.